The September sun beat down hard on the glass and steel skyscraper windows in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. The city buzzed with the typical movement of a Tuesday morning, but on the 47th floor of the Castellano Holdings corporate building, a tense silence hung in the air. Vincent Castellano, a 52-year-old man with perfectly styled gray hair and an Italian suit that cost more than a compact car, walked through the marble corridors with firm, calculated steps. Vincent wasn't just the CEO of one of the largest construction companies in the American Southwest. Behind the respectable facade of a successful businessman, he commanded one of Phoenix's most influential criminal families. His legitimate businesses served as the perfect laundry for operations that extended from drug trafficking to extortion of small merchants. He was a man who had built his empire with iron fists and sharp intelligence, always maintaining the appearance of an exemplary citizen. That morning, Vincent was particularly irritated. He had received information that the FBI was investigating some of his subsidiary companies, and he urgently needed someone who could translate confidential documents in various languages, documents that could compromise his entire operation if they fell into the wrong hands. His usual contacts were unavailable or had become security risks. "Damn it," Vincent muttered as he entered his luxurious office, decorated with mahogany furniture and artwork worth fortunes. "I need someone trustworthy, and I need them now." On the other side of the city, in a small two-bedroom apartment in the Maryvale neighborhood, Sofia Ramirez, 23, finished making her mother's bed before leaving for another day of work. Sofia was a young woman of medium height, with long brown hair, always tied in a practical ponytail, and dark eyes that shone with an intelligence that few around her could perceive. "Mija, you don't need to do this," said Carmen Ramirez, her 48-year-old mother, while adjusting her navy blue housekeeper uniform. Carmen had worked for the Castellano family for 15 years, first at Vincent's mansion in Scottsdale, and now at the corporate office, where she was responsible for cleaning the executive floors. "Mom, you work so hard, you barely have time to rest," Sofia replied lovingly, checking if her mother had taken her blood pressure medication. "It's the least I can do." Carmen smiled proudly as she looked at her daughter. Sofia had graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in linguistics with highest honors, spoke 9 languages fluently, and dreamed of working as an interpreter for international organizations. However, the family's financial reality forced her to work 3 different jobs. She gave private language lessons in the morning, worked as a clerk in a department store in the afternoon, and translated documents freelance during the evenings. "You're so intelligent, Mija. One day, the world will recognize that," said Carmen, kissing her daughter's forehead before taking her purse and the keys to the used car they shared. "I know, Mom. I just need an opportunity," Sofia replied, trying to hide the frustration in her voice. She had sent resumes to dozens of companies and organizations, but always received the same response. "We don't have any positions available at the moment," or "We're looking for candidates with more experience." The two left the apartment together, located in a modest but well-maintained housing complex. The Maryvale neighborhood was known for its cultural diversity, with Mexican, Salvadoran, Guatemalan, and other nationality families living side by side. Sofia always felt at home there, where she could practice her languages with neighbors and help immigrant children with homework. During the trip to downtown, Carmen drove while Sofia reviewed some translations on her tablet. It was freelance work that paid little, but kept her sharp in her linguistic knowledge. "Sofia, do you remember when you were little and would listen to the boss's conversations when I worked at their house?" Carmen asked with a nostalgic smile. "How could I forget? You always told me to stay quiet and not bother anyone," Sofia laughed. "But I loved listening to the different languages the guests spoke. That's how I discovered my passion for languages. And look where that led you. 9 languages, Micha: Spanish, English, Italian, French, German, Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, and Portuguese. It's impressive." Sofia nodded, but a shadow of sadness passed through her eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if it's worth having all this knowledge if no one gives me a chance to use it professionally. They arrived at the Castellano Holdings building at 7:30 a.m. Carmen always arrived early to finish cleaning before the executives started arriving. Sofia accompanied her to the employee entrance, where they said goodbye with a hug. "Have a good day, Mom. I love you." "I love you too, mija. Be careful in traffic." Carmen entered the building and took the service elevator to the 47th floor. Vincent Castellano's office was always the first to be cleaned, as he usually arrived around 9 a.m. While vacuuming the imported Persian carpet, Carmen couldn't help but notice the tension in the air. There were papers scattered on the desk, dirty whiskey glasses, and full ash trays, signs that Vincent had spent the night working. At 8:45 a.m., Vincent arrived at the office, accompanied by two of his trusted men, Tony Benedetto, a corpulent man of Italian origin who served as his right hand, and Marcus Chen, a former military man who handled Vincent's personal security. "Carmen, good morning," Vincent said politely, as he always did. Despite his criminal activities, he always treated employees with basic respect, understanding that this was essential to maintain appearances. "Good morning, Mr. Castellano," Carmen replied, continuing her work discreetly. Vincent went to his desk and immediately began making phone calls. Carmen, even trying to concentrate on cleaning, couldn't help but hear fragments of the conversation. "I need someone who speaks Russian and Italian fluently." "No, I can't use the usual translators. It's too risky. I need someone trustworthy." The conversation continued for several minutes, with Vincent becoming increasingly frustrated. Carmen finished cleaning the office and was about to leave when Vincent hung up the phone forcefully, clearly irritated. "Damn it! How is it possible that in a city like Phoenix, I can't find a reliable translator?" Vincent exploded, slamming his fist on the desk. Tony tried to calm him. "Boss, we'll find someone. Maybe we can bring someone from Las Vegas or Los Angeles." "We don't have time for that, Tony. I need these documents translated by tomorrow, or our entire border operation could go down the drain." Carmen, who was organizing her cleaning supplies near the door, hesitated for a moment. She knew she shouldn't interfere in Vincent's business, but she also knew her daughter was desperately looking for an opportunity to use her linguistic skills. "Excuse me, Mr. Castellano," Carmen said timidly, making Vincent and his men look in her direction. "Yes, Carmen, what is it?" I didn't want to interfere, but I heard you're looking for a translator." Vincent frowned, surprised by the interruption. "And?" Carmen took a deep breath, gathering courage. "My daughter, Sofia, she speaks 9 languages fluently. She graduated in linguistics from ASU and works as a freelance translator." An awkward silence took over the office. Tony and Marcus exchanged skeptical looks while Vincent processed the information. Then, to Carmen's surprise, Vincent began to laugh. It wasn't a cruel laugh, but one of genuine disbelief. "Carmen, I appreciate your concern, but we're talking about extremely complex and confidential documents. I need someone with experience in high-level corporate translations, not a girl who gives private lessons." Carmen felt her face heat up with shame, but didn't give up. "Mr. Castellano, with all due respect, my daughter isn't just a girl. She graduated with highest honors, speaks Spanish, English, Italian, French, German, Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, and Portuguese. She has already translated documents for various companies and..." "9 languages?" Vincent interrupted, his expression changing slightly. "You're telling me your daughter, the maid's daughter, speaks 9 languages?" "Yes, sir. She's always been very intelligent. Since she was little, she..." Vincent raised his hand, interrupting Carmen again. He leaned back in his leather chair, studying the face of the woman who had cleaned his office for so many years. Carmen had always been discreet, reliable, and had never caused problems. But the idea that her daughter could be the solution to his current problem seemed too absurd to be true. "Tony, what do you think?" Vincent asked, turning to his right hand. Tony shrugged. "Boss, at this point, we don't have many options. If the girl really speaks all those languages, but how can we be sure?" Marcus questioned. "Anyone can say they speak 9 languages." Vincent nodded, agreeing with Marcus's concern. He looked at Carmen again, who remained standing near the door, clearly nervous but determined. "Carmen, is your daughter available now?" She's giving private lessons but finishes at 11 a.m., Carmen replied quickly. Vincent looked at his watch. It was 9:15 a.m. Very well. Call her and ask her to come here at 11:30 a.m. We'll do a little test. If she really speaks all those languages like you say, maybe we can talk about temporary work. Carmen felt her heart race. Really, Mr. Castellano? You'll give her a chance. I'll give her a chance to prove you're not exaggerating, Vincent corrected. But Carmen, I want to make one thing very clear. If your daughter isn't what you're promising, this could affect your position here. Understand? Carmen swallowed hard, but nodded firmly. I understand, Mr. Castellano. My daughter won't disappoint you. We'll see, Vincent said, returning his attention to the papers on his desk. Tony, prepare some documents in different languages to test the girl. Nothing too confidential yet. Just enough to verify if she really has the skills her mother claims. While Carmen left the office to call Sofia, Vincent couldn't stop thinking about the situation. In all his years commanding criminal operations, he had learned that the most unexpected solutions sometimes came from the most unlikely places. But the maid's daughter? Could that really be possible? On the other side of the city, Sofia was finishing a private French lesson with a teenager when her phone rang. Hello, Mom. Sofia, mija, you need to come to Mr. Castellano's office now. He wants to meet you. What? Why? Carmen quickly explained the situation, and Sofia felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Mom, are you sure this is a good idea? What if I can't impress him? Mija, this could be the opportunity you've been waiting for. You're brilliant, and it's time to show that to the world. Sofia looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror of the house where she was giving lessons. She was wearing a simple blouse and jeans, not exactly the look she imagined for a job interview at a large corporation. Okay, Mom, I'll go home to change and then come there. I'll be there at 11:30 a.m. I love you, mija. You're going to succeed. While Sofia ran home to prepare, Vincent remained skeptical about the entire situation. He had built his empire based on precise calculations and proven competent people. The idea of trusting important documents to an unknown young woman, the daughter of his maid, went against all his instincts. But time was running out, and he desperately needed someone who could translate the documents that had arrived from his international partners. Documents that contained information about smuggling routes, communication codes, and financial details that could destroy his entire operation if misinterpreted or fell into the wrong hands. At 11:25 a.m., Sofia arrived at the Castellano Holdings building. She had chosen a navy blue blazer, a white blouse, and black dress pants, the most professional her wardrobe allowed. Her hair was pulled back in an elegant bun, and she carried a briefcase with examples of her translation work. In the elevator, while going up to the 47th floor, Sofia tried to control her nerves. She had dreamed of an opportunity like this for so long that she could hardly believe it was actually happening. You can do this, she murmured to herself, checking her appearance in the elevator mirror. This is your chance. When the elevator doors opened, Sofia was greeted by a receptionist who directed her to the waiting area of Vincent's office. The environment was intimidating. Expensive furniture, sophisticated artwork, and a panoramic view of Phoenix that took her breath away. A few minutes later, the office door opened and Carmen appeared, followed by a tall, imposing man Sofia immediately recognized as Vincent Castellano. She had seen photos of him in newspapers and business magazines, but in person, he seemed even more intimidating. Sofia, this is my daughter, Carmen said, proud but nervous. Vincent studied the young woman for a moment. Sofia was clearly intelligent. This was evident in her alert eyes and the confident way she presented herself despite the obviously nervous situation. Miss Ramirez, it's a pleasure to meet you, Vincent said, extending his hand. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Castellano, Sofia replied, shaking his hand firmly. Thank you for the opportunity. Well, it's not exactly an opportunity yet, Vincent said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. First, I need to verify if you really have the skills your mother claims. Would you mind taking a small test? Of course not, Sofia replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Vincent led her into his office, where Tony and Marcus were already waiting with a pile of documents in different languages. Very well, Miss Ramirez, Vincent said, sitting behind his imposing desk. "Your mother told me you speak 9 languages. Let's see if that's true." And so, in the luxurious office on the 47th floor of a Phoenix skyscraper, with her mother's professional life at stake and her own dreams hanging by a thread, Sofia Ramirez prepared for the test that could change her life forever. The first chapter of the story was just beginning, and none of those present in the room could imagine how that seemingly simple meeting would trigger a series of events that would transform not only Sofia's life, but also Vincent Castellano's own perception of loyalty, intelligence, and the true value of the people around him. Vincent Castellano leaned back in his leather chair, observing Sofia with calculating eyes. Tony had prepared a careful selection of documents: commercial contracts in Italian, correspondence in Russian, financial reports in Mandarin, and some technical texts in Arabic and German. Nothing that could compromise the organization's most sensitive operations, but complex enough to test the young woman's true abilities. "Very well, Miss Ramirez," Vincent said, picking up the first document. "Let's start with something simple. This is a commercial contract in Italian. I want you to read it aloud and then give me a summary in English." Sofia took the document with steady hands, despite her nerves. It was an import contract for Carrara marble, with specific technical terms from the construction industry. She began reading in Italian with perfect pronunciation, her voice flowing naturally through the complex legal terms. "Questo contratto stabilisce i termini e le condizioni per l'importazione di marmo di Carrara di prima qualità, con specifiche tecniche che includono la densità, la resistenza alla compressione e i requisiti di finitura superficiale." Vincent and Tony exchanged surprised looks. Sofia's pronunciation was impeccable, with the authentic Tuscan accent that only came from years of dedicated study. When she finished reading, she provided a detailed summary in English, explaining not only the basic content, but also the legal and technical nuances of the document. "Impressive," Tony murmured, clearly surprised. "Let's continue," Vincent said, trying to maintain his neutral expression, but internally beginning to become intrigued. He picked up a document in Russian, a commercial correspondence full of slang and idiomatic expressions that even experienced translators would have difficulty with. Sofia took the paper and, without hesitation, began reading in fluent Russian. Her pronunciation was so natural, it seemed she had grown up speaking the language. When she finished, she explained not only the literal content, but also the cultural context behind some of the expressions used. "This document is from a Moscow businessman discussing partnership terms," Sofia explained. "He uses several idiomatic expressions that indicate initial distrust, but willingness to negotiate. The phrase doveri, no proveri, trust but verify, suggests he wants additional guarantees before closing any deal." Vincent leaned forward, genuinely impressed. The young woman wasn't just translating words, she was interpreting the cultural and emotional subtext of the document. "Marcus, get the Mandarin document," Vincent instructed. The Mandarin document was even more challenging, a financial report with specific technical terminology from the Chinese stock market. Sofia examined it for a few seconds, then began reading the complex characters with the same fluency she had demonstrated in the other languages. When she finished, she not only translated the content, but also explained the differences between Chinese and American financial systems that affected the interpretation of the data. "This report shows significant financial movements in technology companies in Shenzhen," Sofia explained. "But it's important to note that the numbers include government investments that have no direct equivalent in the American system. So the profitability analysis needs to be adjusted for." "Enough," Vincent interrupted, raising his hand. He was clearly impressed, but also beginning to feel uncomfortable with the level of competence Sofia was demonstrating. "Tony, bring the Arabic and German documents." The next 20 minutes were an even more impressive demonstration of Sofia's abilities. She navigated classical Arabic in a legal document with the same ease with which she translated a German technical report on civil engineering. Each translation was not only accurate, but also culturally sensitive and contextually relevant. When Sofia finished the last document, A heavy silence took over the office. Vincent looked at her as if he was seeing a ghost. In all his years of business, both legitimate and illegitimate, he had never encountered someone with such exceptional linguistic abilities. "My God," Tony murmured, breaking the silence. "She really speaks all those languages." Vincent stood up and walked to the window, looking at Phoenix's urban landscape while processing what he had just witnessed. Carmen, who had remained silent throughout the test, watched her daughter with barely contained pride. "Ms. Ramirez," Vincent finally said, turning to face Sophia, "where did you learn all these languages?" Sophia took a deep breath before answering. "I started with Spanish and English at home, obviously. Then in school, I became interested in French and Italian. In college, I studied linguistics and specialized in Russian and Mandarin. I learned Arabic on my own, using apps and talking with Syrian refugees at a community center where I volunteer. I learned German because I wanted to read Goethe in the original, and Portuguese because I was always fascinated by Brazilian culture." "And you do volunteer work?" Vincent asked, intrigued. "Yes, sir. I help immigrants and refugees with translations of legal documents, immigration forms, and communication with authorities. Often it's the difference between getting or not getting asylum, or between understanding or not understanding their rights." Vincent felt something strange in his chest, a mixture of admiration and discomfort. Here was a young woman who used her extraordinary talents to help the less fortunate, while he used his own talents to exploit and intimidate. "Very impressive," Vincent said, returning to his desk. "But tell me, Miss Ramirez, do you have any experience with, let's say, more sensitive documents? Situations that require absolute discretion?" Sophia hesitated for a moment, realizing there was something more behind the question. "Mr. Castellano, if you're asking whether I understand the importance of confidentiality, the answer is yes. I've already translated medical, legal, and financial documents that required total discretion. I understand that some information is privileged and should never be shared. And if I offered you a job that paid very well, but required you to translate documents without asking questions about their content or origin," Sophia looked at her mother, who encouraged her with a subtle nod, then returned her attention to Vincent. "Mr. Castellano, I need to be honest with you. I desperately need work, and I know this could be the opportunity of my life, but I also need to know that I won't be doing anything that could harm innocent people." The answer caught Vincent by surprise. Most people in difficult financial situations would accept any well-paying job without asking questions. But Sophia was establishing ethical limits, even in the face of an opportunity that could change her life. "Interesting," Vincent said, studying the young woman's face. "And if I guaranteed that the documents you would translate are purely commercial, international contracts, business correspondence, financial reports, nothing that could harm innocent people?" Sophia considered the proposal for a moment. She knew there was something Vincent wasn't telling her, but she also knew this was probably her only chance to use her skills professionally and help her family financially. "If you give me your word that I won't be contributing to anything that could cause harm to innocent people, then I accept," Sophia said firmly. Vincent smiled, a genuine smile this time. "You have my word, Miss Ramirez." In fact, Vincent was being partially honest. The documents Sophia would initially translate would indeed be commercial: import contracts, correspondence with international partners, and financial reports. What he didn't mention was that these businesses included money laundering and smuggling operations. But technically, the documents themselves didn't contain direct instructions to harm people. "Very well," Vincent said, returning to his desk. "Tony, prepare a temporary work contract for Ms. Ramirez. 3 months initially, with possibility of renewal. Salary of $8,000 per month, plus bonuses for special projects." Sophia felt her jaw drop. $8,000 a month was more than she earned in an entire year with all her jobs combined. "Mr. Castellano, that's very generous," Sophia stammered. "Exceptional talent deserves exceptional compensation," Vincent replied. "But I want to make it clear that this job requires absolute discretion. You cannot discuss anything you translate here with anyone, not even your mother." Understood? Sophia nodded vigorously. Understood perfectly, sir. Great. You can start tomorrow. Tony will show you your office and explain the security procedures. While Tony led Sophia out of the office to show her the facilities, Vincent turned to Carmen, who was still processing what had just happened. Carmen, your daughter is truly extraordinary, Vincent said. You must be very proud. I am, Mr. Castellano. Thank you so much for giving her this opportunity. Actually, Carmen, you did me a favor. I was desperate for someone with these skills, and you brought me exactly what I needed. After Carmen left, Vincent was alone in his office, reflecting on the morning's events. Marcus, who had remained silent throughout the test, finally spoke. Boss, are you sure it's a good idea to hire the girl? She asked a lot of questions about the nature of the work. That's exactly why she's perfect, Vincent replied. Someone who asks ethical questions is someone I can trust not to betray me for money. Besides, she desperately needs this job. That creates loyalty. And if she discovers the true nature of our business? Vincent smiled coldly. Marcus, you saw her abilities. With someone like that working for us, we can expand our international operations in ways we never imagined. As for the risk, well, let's start slowly and see how she reacts. Meanwhile, Sophia was being led by Tony through the executive floors of the building. Her new office was small but elegant, with a partial view of the city and state-of-the-art equipment. You'll have access to computer-assisted translation systems, but Mr. Castellano prefers human translations for important documents, Tony explained. Your hours are flexible, but when there are urgent projects, we expect total availability. I understand, Sophia said, still trying to believe her luck. Tony, can I ask a question? Sure. Why was Mr. Castellano so desperate for a translator? I mean, a company this size certainly has resources to hire the best professionals. Tony hesitated for a moment. Let's say Mr. Castellano values discretion very much. Not all professional translators are willing to sign confidentiality agreements as rigorous as ours. Sophia nodded, accepting the explanation, although a small voice in her mind whispered that there was more to the story than Tony was telling. That afternoon, Sophia returned home in a state of euphoria. She had gotten the job of her dreams, with a salary that would allow her not only to support her family comfortably, but also pay off student loans and maybe even save for the future. Mom, I got it! Sophia shouted as soon as she entered the apartment. He hired me! Carmen ran to hug her daughter, tears of joy streaming down her face. I knew you could do it, mija. Tell me everything. Sophia recounted the day's events, from the intimidating test to Vincent's generous offer. Carmen listened with growing pride, but also with a subtle concern she tried to hide. Sophia, are you sure this job is safe? Carmen asked carefully. What do you mean, Mom? Carmen hesitated. She had worked for the Castellano family for 15 years, and although she had never seen anything directly suspicious, there were rumors, whispers among other employees, small details that didn't fit perfectly with the image of a legitimate construction company. Nothing specific, mija. It's just that Mr. Castellano is a very powerful man, and powerful men sometimes have complicated business. Sophia took her mother's hands. Mom, he gave me his word that I wouldn't be doing anything that could harm innocent people. And besides, it's just translations. What could go wrong? Carmen smiled and kissed her daughter's forehead. You're right, mija. I'm being paranoid. I'm very proud of you. That night, while Sophia prepared for her first day of work, Vincent was in his private office at home, a luxurious mansion in the Scottsdale Hills. He was on the phone with Dmitry Volkov, his Russian partner in various money laundering operations. Dmitry, I found our solution to the communication problem, Vincent said in English, knowing Dmitry spoke the language fluently. Хорошо, Vincent. I hope it's someone trustworthy. Our border business can't have more misunderstandings. She's perfect, young, talented, and needs the money. Plus, she has ethical principles, which ironically makes her more trustworthy. Ethical principles? Dmitry laughed. In our line of business? Exactly. Someone with principles won't betray us for money because they already have established moral limits. It's easier to work within those limits than to try to corrupt someone completely. Interesting philosophy, my friend. I hope you're right. I am, Vincent said confidently. In 3 months, our international operations will be running more smoothly than ever. After hanging up, Vincent poured himself a glass of 30-year-old Scotch whiskey and went out to the terrace of his mansion. The city of Phoenix stretched below him, its lights shining like terrestrial stars. He had built his empire through careful calculations and strategic decisions, and hiring Sofia Ramirez seemed to be one of the best decisions he had made in years. What Vincent didn't know was that Sofia Ramirez was much more observant and intelligent than he imagined, and that her education in linguistics had not only taught her to translate words, but also to read between the lines, to perceive patterns, and to make connections that others might miss. In the coming days, as Sofia began working with Vincent's documents, she would begin to notice inconsistencies, strange patterns, and references that didn't fit perfectly with the narrative of a legitimate construction company. And when that happened, both Sofia and Vincent would discover that their lives were about to become complicated in ways neither could have predicted. The second chapter of the story had ended, but Sofia Ramirez's true journey was just beginning, a journey that would take her far beyond the simple translations she imagined, into a world of secrets, dangers, and discoveries that would test not only her linguistic abilities, but also her courage, intelligence, and moral principles. Sofia's first day at the Castellano Holdings office began at 8 a.m. on a sunny Thursday in October. She had arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a navy blue professional suit she had bought the night before with part of her savings, an investment that now seemed insignificant compared to the salary she would start receiving. Tony Benedetto met her at the 47th floor reception and led her to her new office. The space was modest but well-equipped. A dark wood desk, a state-of-the-art computer, a multifunction printer, and a small library with dictionaries in various languages. "Mr. Castellano wants you to start with these documents," Tony said, placing a brown folder on the desk. "They're import contracts that arrived yesterday from our partners in Italy. Nothing too complex to start with." Sofia opened the folder and examined the documents. They were indeed import contracts, agreements for purchasing marble, tiles, and other construction materials from Italian companies. Everything seemed perfectly legitimate, although she noticed that the amounts involved were substantial, millions of dollars in materials. "Is there a specific deadline for these translations?" Sofia asked. "Mr. Castellano would like to have them by the end of the day, if possible. But don't worry. He understands you're adapting to the new environment." After Tony left, Sofia settled at her desk and began working. The documents were indeed complex, full of specific technical terminology from the construction industry and Italian legal terms that required absolute precision. But for someone with her abilities, it was exactly the kind of intellectual challenge she loved. While translating, Sofia began to notice some interesting details. The contracts mentioned deliveries at specific times, always during the early morning hours or on weekends. Additionally, there were unusual clauses about quality inspections that should be performed by specialized personnel from Castellano Holdings itself, without the presence of government inspectors. "Strange," Sofia murmured to herself. "Why avoid government inspectors if everything is legitimate?" She noted her observations in a personal notebook, a habit she had developed in college to track interesting linguistic patterns. It wasn't anything suspicious, just professional curiosity about unusual business practices. Around 11 a.m., Carmen appeared at Sofia's office door with a cleaning cart. "How's your first day going, mija?" Carmen asked in a low voice, checking to make sure no one was nearby. "It's going well, Mom. The work is interesting, although some of the contractual terms are unique." Carmen frowned. "Unique how?" "Nothing major. Just some clauses about delivery schedules and inspections that are different from what I studied in college. They're probably standard industry practices I don't know about yet." Carmen nodded, but Sofia noticed a shadow of concern in her mother's eyes. Before she could ask about it, Tony appeared in the hallway. "Sofia, how are you progressing with the Italian contracts?" Very well. I should finish by 3 p.m. Excellent. Mr. Castellano will be impressed. Tony turned to Carmen. Carmen, Mr. Castellano wants to see you in his office when you finish this floor. After both left, Sofia returned to work, but couldn't stop thinking about her mother's worried expression. Carmen had known Vincent Castellano for 15 years. She certainly knew more about the nature of his business than she was saying. At 2:30 p.m., Sofia had finished the translations of the Italian contracts. She carefully reviewed her work, checking every technical term and legal nuance. When she was satisfied with the quality, she printed the translations and headed to Vincent's office. Come in, Vincent said when she knocked on the door. He was on the phone, speaking in English with someone about delivery schedules and alternative routes. When he saw Sofia, he gestured for her to sit and quickly ended the call. Ms. Ramirez, how was your first day? Very productive, Mr. Castellano. I finished the translations of the Italian contracts. Sofia placed the documents on his desk. Vincent took the translations and examined them quickly. His expression gradually changed from neutral to impressed. This is exceptional, he said, looking at Sofia with renewed interest. You not only translated the technical terms correctly, but also included explanatory notes about the differences between Italian and American business practices. This is exactly the kind of contextual analysis I needed. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. I learned in college that a good translation goes beyond words. It must convey cultural and contextual meaning. Impressive. Vincent leaned back in his chair. Tell me, did you notice anything unusual in the contracts? Sofia hesitated for a moment. It was a strange question. Why would he be expecting her to find something unusual in his own contracts? Well, some of the delivery schedules and inspection procedures are different from what I studied about standard business practices. But I imagine each company has its own protocols. Vincent nodded slowly. Exactly. We have specific operational needs that require flexibility in delivery schedules. Nothing out of the ordinary for a company of our size. I understand perfectly, Sofia said, although a small voice in her mind whispered that there was more to the explanation. Very well. For tomorrow, I have some Russian documents that need urgent translation. They are correspondence with partners in Moscow about a joint real estate development project. Vincent opened a locked drawer in his desk and removed a red folder. These documents are extremely confidential. You should work on them only in your office, and the translations cannot be saved on any computer system. Only printed copies, which you must deliver to me personally. Sofia took the folder, noticing it was heavier than expected. Of course, Mr. Castellano. May I ask why so much security? International business is complicated, Ms. Ramirez. Our competitors would pay dearly for information about our future projects. Additionally, some of our Russian partners are, let's say, very particular about privacy. It made sense, Sofia thought. Russian businessmen were known for being extremely cautious with business information, especially after all the sanctions and geopolitical tensions of recent years. I understand. You can count on me to maintain absolute confidentiality. I know I can, Vincent said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, and Miss Ramirez, starting tomorrow, you'll have access to a more secure office on the 45th floor. That's where we handle our most sensitive projects. After Sofia left, Vincent picked up the phone and dialed a number. Dmitri, it's me. The translator is working better than we expected. Yes, she's discreet and competent. No, she doesn't suspect anything yet. Tomorrow she'll start working with the Volga operation documents. Let's see how she reacts. Meanwhile, Sofia returned to her temporary office and stored the red folder in a locked drawer. She was excited about the implicit promotion. A more secure office meant Vincent was trusting her with more important work. At 5 p.m., Sofia was preparing to leave when her mother appeared again. How was the rest of the day, mija? Very well, Mr. Castellano was impressed with my work, and tomorrow I'm going to start working on more important projects. Carmen forced a smile. That's wonderful, mija. Mom, is everything okay? You seem worried. Carmen looked around to make sure they were alone, then approached her daughter. Sofia, I need to tell you something, but you have to promise you'll keep it secret. Of course, Mom. What is it? Today, when Mr. Castellano called me to his office, he asked me strange questions about you. He wanted to know about your friends, your hobbies, if you had a boyfriend, if you usually talked about work at home. Sophia frowned. That is strange. Why would he care about my personal life? I don't know, mija. But he also told me that from now on I shouldn't clean his office when you're working there. He said it's for security reasons. A chill ran down Sophia's spine. Why wouldn't Vincent want her mother around when she was working? And why so many questions about her personal life? Mom, in all these years working for him, have you ever noticed anything strange about his business? Carmen hesitated for a long moment. Sophia, there are things it's better not to know. Mr. Castellano has always treated me well, always paid on time, never asked me to do anything questionable. But what? But I'm not blind, mija. There are late-night meetings, phone calls in languages I don't understand, people who visit the office and don't appear on any official schedule. And sometimes when I'm cleaning, I find burned papers in the trash cans. Sophia felt her stomach tighten. Mom, do you think I should look for another job? Carmen took her daughter's hands. Mija, this job could change our lives. The salary is more than we dreamed of. But you need to be very, very careful. Do your work, keep your head down, and don't ask unnecessary questions. And if I discover something I shouldn't know, then you pretend you didn't see anything and continue doing your work. Understood? Sophia nodded, but inside her mind was racing. She was a naturally curious person, trained to analyze patterns and make connections. Would it be possible to simply ignore anything suspicious she might find? That night in her apartment, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about the conversation with her mother. She opened her laptop and began researching Vincent Castellano on the internet. Most articles portrayed him as a successful businessman and philanthropist, but she found some vague mentions of unproven allegations and archived investigations. A 2018 article in the Arizona Republic mentioned that the FBI had investigated some of Vincent's subsidiary companies for possible money laundering, but the investigation had been closed for lack of evidence. Another 2/20 article talked about alleged connections between Castellano Holdings and organized crime figures, but again, nothing had been proven. Maybe they're just rumors, Sophia murmured to herself. Rich men are always targets of speculation. But as she prepared for bed, Sophia couldn't stop thinking about the red folder locked in her drawer. Tomorrow she would begin working with documents that Vincent considered so sensitive. They required a special office and extreme security protocols. Part of her was excited about the professional challenge. Another part, however, was beginning to wonder if she had gotten herself into something much bigger and more dangerous than she imagined. On the other side of the city, Vincent was in his mansion, meeting with Tony and Marcus in his private office. On the table between them were photos of Sophia, taken discreetly during her first day of work. She's intelligent, Marcus said, examining the photos. Maybe too intelligent. Intelligence is exactly what we need, Vincent replied. But you're right about one thing. We need to monitor her closely. Tony, I want you to install discrete cameras in her new office. Nothing obvious, just enough to track her reactions when she starts working with more sensitive material. And if she discovers the true nature of our business? Tony asked. Vincent smiled coldly. Then we'll have to make a decision about what to do with her. But let's hope that won't be necessary. Sofia Ramirez could be the key to expanding our international operations in ways we never imagined. And her mother? Carmen has been loyal for 15 years. She knows it's better not to ask questions. But let's keep her away from her daughter during work hours, just to be safe. While the three men planned how to manage their new employee, Sophia was lying in her bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondering if she had made the right decision. The money was tempting, the opportunity was incredible, but the warning signs were beginning to accumulate. Tomorrow, she would discover that her instincts were more correct than she imagined. The Russian documents in the red folder weren't about real estate development. They were about something much darker and more dangerous. Something that would test not only her linguistic abilities, but also her moral courage and her ability to navigate much more turbulent waters than anything she had faced before. The third chapter of Sophia's journey was coming to an end, but the real challenges were just beginning. In less than 24 hours, she would find herself face to face with the reality of Vincent Castellano's business and would have to make decisions that could change her life and possibly put her in danger forever. The next morning, a cloudy Friday in October, Sophia arrived at the Castellano Holdings building with a mixture of anxiety and determination. She had spent the night thinking about the conversation with her mother and decided that regardless of what she found in the Russian documents, she would maintain her professionalism and do her job to the best of her ability. Tony was waiting for her in the 45th floor lobby, which was visibly different from the other floors of the building. There was less movement, more security cameras, and all doors seemed to require special access cards. "Good morning, Sophia. Ready for your new office?" "Good morning, Tony. Yes, I'm eager to start." Tony led her down a silent corridor to a door marked only with the number 4507. He swiped an access card, and the door opened with an electronic beep. "This will be your office for special projects," Tony said, handing her the access card. "As you can see, security here is more rigorous. Only you, me, and Mr. Castellano have access to this room." The office was larger than the previous one, with windows offering an impressive view of the city. There was a computer isolated from the main network, a special printer, and a small safe built into the wall. "The computer isn't connected to the internet," Tony explained. "All documents you translate here must be saved only on the local hard drive or printed. Nothing can leave this room without express authorization from Mr. Castellano." Sophia nodded, although a voice in her mind whispered that this was an extreme level of security for a construction company. "The folder Mr. Castellano gave you yesterday is in the safe. The combination is 09-8587, his eldest daughter's birth date. He said you would understand the trust that represents." After Tony left, Sophia was alone in the silent office. She opened the safe and removed the red folder, noticing that her hands were trembling slightly. There was something about the entire situation that made her nervous. She opened the folder and found about 20 documents in Russian, all with official stamps and elaborate signatures. At first glance, they appeared to be business correspondence. But when Sophia began reading the first document, her blood ran cold. The document wasn't about real estate development. It was correspondence between Vincent and a man named Dmitry Volkov, discussing special shipments that would be transported across the Mexico-United States border. The text used euphemisms, but for someone with Sophia's linguistic training, the meaning was clear. They were talking about smuggling. "Товар будет доставлен в обычных контейнерах с мрамором," read one line. "The merchandise will be delivered in normal containers with marble." Sophia felt her stomach tighten. The merchandise clearly wasn't marble. And the references to alternative routes and special inspections she had seen in the Italian contracts suddenly made much more sense. She continued reading, hoping she was misinterpreting, but each document confirmed her worst suspicions. There were references to special pharmaceuticals, an obvious euphemism for drugs, security consultants, probably mercenaries or assassins, and protection fees, extortion. One particularly disturbing document discussed the problem of a non-cooperative partner in Tucson and the necessary measures that would be taken to resolve the situation. The tone was cold and professional, but Sophia understood they were talking about intimidation or possibly violence. Her hands trembled as she read. Vincent Castellano wasn't just a businessman with questionable business practices. He was the head of a criminal organization involved in drug trafficking, money laundering, extortion, and possibly worse things. And now she was translating documents that could be used as evidence to send dozens of people to prison, including her own mother, who could be considered an accomplice for working for the organization. Sophia stood up from the desk and walked to the window, trying to control her breathing. The view of the city that had previously seemed inspiring now made her feel trapped. She was on the 45th floor of a building controlled by a criminal, translating documents that made her a witness to serious illegal activities. She picked up her phone to call someone, anyone, but then remembered there was no signal in the office. The walls were shielded against external communications. "Calm down, Sophia," she murmured to herself. "Think. You need to think." She returned to the desk and continued reading the documents, this time not just translating, but also trying to understand the extent of Vincent's operation. It was much larger than she had imagined. There were connections with criminal organizations in Russia, Mexico, Colombia, and even Italy. Castellano Holdings was just a facade for an international organized crime network. One document in particular caught her attention. It was a list of special employees, people within various government agencies who were being bribed to ignore certain activities. There were names of customs inspectors, local police, and even a federal prosecutor. Sophia realized she was seeing information that could destroy dozens of careers and send many people to prison. But she also realized that now she knew too much to simply leave and pretend nothing had happened. At 11:30 a.m., she heard footsteps in the corridor. Quickly, she saved her partial translations on the computer and closed the physical documents. The door opened and Vincent entered, accompanied by Tony. "Good morning, Ms. Ramirez. How are you progressing with the Russian documents?" Sophia tried to keep her voice steady. "Good morning, Mr. Castellano. I'm making progress. Some of the terms are quite technical." Vincent approached the desk and looked at the partial translations on the computer screen. Sophia had translated only the first paragraphs of each document, focusing on the parts that seemed most innocent. "Interesting," Vincent said, reading over her shoulder. "And what do you think of these technical terms?" It was a loaded question, and Sophia knew it. Vincent was testing her, trying to find out if she had understood the true meaning of the documents. "Well," Sophia said carefully, "it seems your Russian partners use many metaphors and euphemisms in their business communications. It's common in international business, especially when there are concerns about privacy." Vincent smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly. Privacy is very important in our business, especially with partners who operate in complex regulatory environments." "I understand perfectly," Sophia said, forcing a smile. "Great. Continue the good work. I need these translations complete by Monday." After Vincent and Tony left, Sophia allowed herself to breathe again. She had passed the test, at least for now, but now she faced an impossible dilemma. If she completed the translations, she would be helping a criminal organization operate more efficiently. Innocent people could be harmed, drugs would reach the streets, and corruption would spread even further. But if she refused to continue or tried to expose Vincent, she would be putting her own life and her mother's life in danger. Vincent clearly wasn't the type of man who tolerated betrayal or exposure. Sophia spent the rest of the morning pretending to work on the translations, but was actually trying to figure out a way out. She needed help, but didn't know who to trust. The local police could be compromised. She had seen police officers' names on the bribery list. The FBI would be the obvious option, but how could she contact them without raising suspicions? At 12:30 p.m., Tony returned to the office. "Sophia, Mr. Castellano wants you to have lunch with him today. There's a restaurant on the ground floor of the building." "Sure," Sophia said, trying to sound casual. "Let me just save my work." The restaurant on the ground floor was elegant and discreet, with separate tables that offered privacy for business conversations. Vincent was already waiting at a corner table, wearing an impeccable gray suit. "Miss Ramirez, thank you for joining me," Vincent said, standing up politely. "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Castellano." They sat down, and Vincent ordered wine for both, despite Sophia saying she preferred water. "Tell me," Vincent said after the waiter moved away, "what do you think of your new job so far?" "It's challenging," Sophia replied honestly. "More complex than I expected." "Complexity is good. It means you're learning, growing professionally." Vincent took a sip of wine. "You know, Sophia, may I call you Sophia? I see a lot of potential in you." "Thank you, Mr. Castellano." "Vincent. Call me Vincent. After all, we're colleagues now." He leaned forward. "Sophia, I want to be honest with you about something. My business is more diversified than most people imagine." Sophia felt her heart race. "Diversified how?" Let's say construction is just one part of what we do. We have interests in import, export, security consulting, financial services, a variety of sectors. I understand, Sophia said, trying to keep her voice neutral. Some of these businesses operate in gray areas of regulation. It's nothing illegal, you understand. But sometimes it's necessary to be creative to navigate government bureaucracies. Sophia nodded, realizing that Vincent was testing her reactions, trying to see how far he could push her before she started asking inconvenient questions. The thing is, Vincent continued, I need people I can trust absolutely. People who understand that discretion isn't just a preference, but an absolute necessity. I understand the importance of confidentiality, Sophia said. I know you do, but I want to make sure you understand the consequences of breaking that confidentiality. Vincent's tone had changed subtly. It was still polite, but there was an implicit threat in his words. Mr. Castellano, Vincent, may I ask a question? Of course. If I discovered something in my translations that made me uncomfortable, what would happen? Vincent smiled, but his eyes remained cold. That's an interesting question, Sophia. Why do you ask? Just professional curiosity. I want to understand the limits of my work. Well, first of all, I would expect you to come talk to me directly about any concerns. Open communication is essential in any working relationship. He paused. Second, I would remind you that you signed a very rigorous confidentiality agreement. Breaking that agreement would have serious legal consequences. And third, Sophia asked, although she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Vincent leaned even closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Third, I would remind you that your mother has worked for me for 15 years. She's almost like family, and I protect my family, but I also expect absolute loyalty in return. The threat was now explicit. Sophia understood perfectly. If she tried to expose Vincent or leave the job, her mother would pay the price. I understand perfectly, Sophia said, forcing a smile. Great. I knew you were intelligent. Vincent returned to his casual tone. Now let's talk about more pleasant things. Tell me about your plans for the future. The rest of lunch passed in a haze for Sophia. She answered Vincent's questions automatically, while her mind raced trying to find a way out of the impossible situation she found herself in. When they returned to the office, Vincent accompanied her to the 45th floor. Sophia, there's one more thing I want to show you, he said, leading her not to her office, but to a room at the end of the corridor. The room was small and windowless, with only a table, 2 chairs, and a computer monitor. On the walls, there were several screens showing security camera feeds. This is our monitoring center for this floor, Vincent explained casually. As you can see, we maintain constant surveillance to ensure the safety of our employees and documents. Sophia looked at the screens and felt her blood freeze. One of them showed her own office, with a clear view of her desk and computer. Another showed the corridor outside. There were cameras everywhere. Impressive security system, she managed to say. Yes, isn't it? It allows us to keep everyone safe and monitor any unusual activity. The message was clear. They were watching her every move. Well, I'll let you get back to work, Vincent said. Remember, I need those translations by Monday. Alone again in her office, Sophia sat heavily in her chair. She looked at the camera in the corner of the room, knowing she was probably being watched at that exact moment. She was trapped in a job that made her an accomplice to serious crimes, trapped by threats against her mother, trapped by cameras and security systems that monitored her every move. But Sofia Ramirez hadn't gotten where she was by giving up easily. She was intelligent, determined, and most importantly, she knew 9 languages and understood how people communicated when trying to hide secrets. If Vincent Castellano thought he could intimidate her into becoming a silent accomplice, he was seriously underestimating the maid's daughter who spoke 9 languages. Sophia opened the Russian documents again, but this time with a different purpose. She wasn't just translating. She was memorizing names, dates, locations, and details that could be crucial later. And she was beginning to formulate a plan that would require all her intelligence, courage, and linguistic skills. a plan that could save her and her mother or destroy them completely. But first, she needed to finish the translations and buy more time, because Sophia had realized something that Vincent didn't know she knew. In one of the Russian documents, there was a reference to a meeting that would take place the following weekend, a meeting where representatives from all of Vincent's criminal partner organizations would be present. If she could find a way to expose this meeting to the right authorities, she could bring down the entire operation at once. But first, she needed to figure out how to do this without becoming a victim in the process. The weekend passed like an eternity for Sophia. She had finished the translations of the Russian documents on Friday afternoon, delivering them personally to Vincent with a forced smile and the assurance that everything was perfectly clear in the communications with the Moscow partners. During Saturday and Sunday, Sophia stayed home, pretending normalcy for her mother while her mind worked feverishly on a plan. She had memorized crucial details from the documents. The meeting would take place on Tuesday night in a warehouse in Phoenix's industrial district. Representatives from Russia, Mexico, Colombia, and Italy would be present, along with several corrupt American government officials. It was the perfect opportunity to expose the entire criminal network at once. But Sophia needed to find a way to alert authorities without exposing herself or putting her mother in danger. On Monday morning, Sophia arrived at the office with renewed determination. She had spent the weekend researching and had discovered something important. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen was leading a task force against organized crime in the Southwest. More importantly, Agent Chen wasn't on the list of corrupt officials Sophia had seen in the Russian documents. The challenge was how to contact her without raising suspicions. "Good morning, Sophia," Tony said when she arrived at the 45th floor. "Vincent wants to see you in his office." Sophia felt her stomach tighten, but maintained her composure. "Sure. Any idea what he wants to discuss?" "Probably the next projects." "You really impressed him with the Russian translations." In Vincent's office, Sophia found not only the organization's leader, but also two men she didn't recognize. One was clearly Russian, tall, blonde, with visible scars on his hands. The other looked Latin American, with expensive clothes and a heavy gold chain. "Sophia, I want to introduce you to some important partners," Vincent said. "This is Dmitry Volkov from Moscow and Carlos Mendoza from Guadalajara." Sophia greeted the men politely, but inside she was panicking. These were the criminals she had read about in the documents. Dmitry was the head of the Russian money laundering operation, and Carlos controlled one of Mexico's largest drug trafficking routes. "Dmitry and Carlos were very impressed with the quality of your translations," Vincent continued. "They would like you to translate some additional documents for tomorrow's meeting." "Of course," Sophia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What kind of documents?" Dmitry spoke in English with a heavy accent. "They are very important contracts. We need to make sure there are no misunderstandings." Carlos nodded. "Sí, es muy importante que todo esté perfecto." Vincent handed Sophia a new folder, this one even heavier than the previous one. "These documents are extremely sensitive. You'll have today to translate them. Tomorrow night, you'll accompany us to the meeting to provide simultaneous translation, if necessary." Sophia felt the world spin around her. They wanted her to be present at the criminal meeting. This would make her not just a witness, but an active participant. Of course," she managed to say. "It will be an honor to help." "Excellent," Vincent said. "The meeting is at 8 p.m. at Warehouse 47 in the South Industrial Zone. Marcus will pick you up at 7:30 p.m. After the men left, Sophia returned to her office with trembling legs. She opened the new folder and found documents even more incriminating than the previous ones. There were detailed maps of smuggling routes, lists of corrupt officials with specific bribery amounts, and even photographs of people who had caused problems for the organization. One photo in particular made her feel nauseous. It was of a young investigative journalist from Tucson who had disappeared 6 months earlier. On the back of the photo, someone had written in Russian, "Problem solved." Sophia ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she returned to her office, her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the documents. She needed to act, and she needed to act fast. During lunch, Sophia told Tony she needed to go out to buy headache medicine. Instead, she drove to an internet cafe downtown, far from anywhere she could be recognized. Using a public computer, she created a temporary email account and sent a message to the FBI office in Phoenix. For the attention of Special Agent Sarah Chen, I have information about an organized crime meeting that will take place tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Warehouse 47, South Industrial Zone, Phoenix. Leaders of criminal organizations from Russia, Mexico, Colombia, and Italy will be present, along with corrupt American government officials. This is a unique opportunity to dismantle an international drug trafficking and money laundering network. I cannot identify myself for security reasons, but the information is accurate. Please investigate discreetly. After sending the email, Sophia deleted the browser history and returned to the office. She had taken the first step, but now she needed to survive until Tuesday's meeting without raising suspicions. The rest of Monday passed in a haze of anxiety. Sophia translated the documents mechanically. Her mind focused on what would happen in the next 24 hours. She knew she was taking an enormous risk. If Vincent discovered she had contacted the FBI, both she and her mother would be dead. At 5 p.m., when she was preparing to leave, Vincent appeared in her office. "Sophia, how are the translations progressing?" "Almost finished. I should finalize everything by tomorrow morning." "Perfect." Vincent sat in the chair across from her desk. "I want to talk to you about tomorrow night." "Yes?" "The meeting you'll witness is, let's say, high level. You'll see and hear things that are extremely confidential. I hope you understand the importance of maintaining absolute silence about everything." "Of course, Vincent. You can trust me." Vincent studied her face for a long moment. "I know I can, but I want you to understand that after tomorrow, you'll officially be part of our extended family. This brings benefits, but also responsibilities." "What kind of responsibilities?" "Absolute loyalty, total discretion, and understanding that betrayal has very serious consequences." Sophia nodded, trying to appear calm. "I understand perfectly." "Great. Oh, and Sophia, your mother won't come to work tomorrow. I gave her a paid day off. I thought it would be better for her to stay home." Sophia's blood ran cold. Vincent was isolating her mother, probably as a way to ensure Sophia wouldn't try anything stupid. "That's very kind of you," she managed to say. "I take care of my family," Vincent said, standing up. "Until tomorrow, Sophia." That night, Sophia arrived home to find her mother watching television in the living room. "How was your day, mija?" "It was good, Mom. I heard you have tomorrow off." Carmen nodded. "Mr. Castellano said I deserved a rest. It was very kind of him." Sophia sat next to her mother, fighting the urge to tell her everything. But she knew that would only put Carmen in more danger. "Mom, I love you very much," Sophia said, hugging her mother. "I love you too, mija. Are you okay? You seem worried." "I'm just tired. It's been an intense week at work." "You're working too hard. Maybe you should take some time to relax." "Maybe after this week," Sophia said, knowing that if her plan worked, she would never have to worry about working for Vincent Castellano again. On Tuesday morning, Sophia arrived at the office earlier than usual. She finalized the translations and delivered them to Vincent, who seemed satisfied with the work. "Excellent, as always," he said. "Are you ready for tonight?" "Yes. What kind of clothing should I wear?" "Something professional, but not too formal. You'll be there as a translator, not as a participant." During the day, Sophia tried to maintain normalcy, but was constantly nervous. She checked her personal email several times, hoping for some sign that the FBI had received her message, but there was no response. At 7:30 p.m., Marcus appeared in her office. "Ready to go?" Sophia grabbed her purse and followed Marcus to the elevator. They went down to the underground garage, where a black SUV was waiting. During the trip to the industrial zone, Marcus remained silent, but Sophia could feel him watching her through the rearview mirror. Warehouse 47 was a large, apparently abandoned building, but when they arrived, Sophia saw several expensive cars parked in the back. Marcus led her through a side entrance to an improvised office inside the warehouse. The scene Sophia encountered was like something out of a crime movie. There was a large table in the center of the room, surrounded by men in expensive suits. She recognized Vincent, Dimitri, and Carlos, but there were at least a dozen other men she didn't know. "Gentlemen," Vincent said when Sophia entered, "our translator has arrived." Sophia was quickly introduced to the group and directed to a chair in the corner of the room, where there was a small recorder and notepads. "You'll translate as needed," Vincent explained. "Mainly from Russian and Spanish to English, but we might need other languages too." The meeting began at 8:15 p.m. Sophia listened in horror as the men casually discussed drug trafficking routes, rival assassinations, bribery of public officials, and laundering millions of dollars. Dimitri spoke about a new route through Canada. Carlos discussed problems with rival cartels in Mexico. An Italian man talked about operations in Europe, and Vincent coordinated everything, like the conductor of a criminal symphony. Sophia translated mechanically, her mind recording every detail for possible future use. She was witnessing the largest organized crime meeting in Southwest American history. At 9:30 p.m., when the meeting was at its peak, Sophia heard something that made her smile internally, the distant sound of helicopters. Vincent heard it too. He raised his hand, interrupting the conversation. "What's that noise?" Marcus ran to the window and looked outside. His face paled. "Boss, we have a problem. There are federal agents surrounding the building." Chaos erupted in the room. Men shouted in various languages. Some ran for the exits. Others drew weapons. Vincent looked directly at Sophia, his eyes full of suspicion and rage. "How did they know?" he roared. Sophia tried to look as surprised as the others. "I don't know. Maybe someone followed us." But Vincent wasn't convinced. He approached her, his hand moving to the weapon under his jacket. "You," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You betrayed us." "No," Sophia protested. "I would never do that. Liar!" Vincent drew his weapon, but before he could point it at Sophia, the main warehouse door exploded. FBI agents stormed the location, shouting orders and pointing weapons at everyone present. "FBI, everyone on the ground, now!" In the confusion that followed, Sophia threw herself behind a table while shots were fired. She saw Vincent trying to escape through a back exit, but was brought down by 2 agents. Dimitri and Carlos were also captured, along with most of the other criminals present. In a matter of minutes, the Southwest's largest organized crime operation had been dismantled. When the dust settled, Sophia found herself handcuffed along with the others, but an Asian American woman in an FBI vest approached her. "Are you Sophia Ramirez?" "Yes, I'm Special Agent Sarah Chen. We received your email." Sophia felt a wave of relief. "Thank you for believing me." "You did the right thing," Agent Chen said, removing Sophia's handcuffs. "But now we need to talk. You have a lot to tell us." As Sophia was led out of the warehouse, she saw Vincent being placed in an FBI van. He looked at her through the window, his eyes promising revenge, even in defeat. But Sophia felt no fear. She had made the right choice, even knowing the risks. She had used her intelligence and skills to make a difference, to protect innocent people and bring justice. In the weeks that followed, Sophia would become the key witness in the largest organized crime case in Arizona history. Her mother would be placed in witness protection, and both would receive new identities and a chance to start over in another state. Vincent Castellano and his associates would receive life sentences. The criminal network they had built would be completely dismantled, and Sophia Ramirez, the maid's daughter who spoke 9 languages, would become a legend at the FBI, the young translator who brought down a criminal empire with her courage, intelligence, and unwavering determination to do what was right. Months later, in a new city with a new identity, Sophia would receive an offer to work as a specialized translator for the FBI. She would accept, knowing she had finally found a way to use her talents to protect the innocent and fight against injustice. The journey that began with a simple translation test had transformed into something much greater, a story of courage, sacrifice, and proof that sometimes the most unlikely people can make the biggest difference. Vincent Castellano had laughed when Carmen said her daughter spoke 9 languages. But in the end, It was exactly that extraordinary ability, combined with even more extraordinary courage, that brought about his downfall. The maid's daughter had defeated the mafia boss, and the world was a safer place because of it.